going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music, and today I want to talk about this record right here. This is William Antonini e la Sua Orchestra. Sorry about that horrendous pronunciation. This is a reissue. It was reissued on the Sonar Music Editions reissue label, which I think specializes in Italian library soundtrack records. The original record, which I believe was released on this label right here, EMR. There we go, zooming in. And the original pressing of this record goes for about $300 to $400. Yeah, fuck that. I went with the reissue, and the reissue is fairly reasonable, like $30, or at least that's about how much I paid for it here in Japan. I gotta say, as far as a first foray into Italian records, this was a great pick. I really, really like this record, and I want to tell you a little bit why I think it's worth checking out. So, with that out of the way, let's get into this guy. Much like Rene Costi, William Antonini is a library music composer and arranger, and he likes to pull from a lot of American genres, American musical genres, and bring them into his own music. So on this record, you can expect to hear a lot of psychedelic rock, a lot of jazz and classical, a little bit of funk and soul, a little bit of avant-garde, but that's pretty much just the last track on here, and a whole slew of other things, and they're all sort of just brought together by what I can guess is only like a European sensibility to arrangement. Maybe that's just my feeling because I don't really have a lot of musical knowledge or experience when it comes to this sort of stuff. But it just really feels like library music arrangers in Europe had this same sort of innate sensibility for bringing in all these genres and mixing them together and just making for like a musical wild ride. And this record is definitely no exception when it comes to that. There's a pretty wide variety of sounds on here, but I'd say psychedelic rock, more specifically up-tempo psychedelic rock with a little bit of a funk twist in there, is pretty much like the majority of how this record sounds. At least 6 tracks on here, I want to say it's at least 6 tracks on here, are plus 140 BPM with tons of guitar, horns, and funky drums, and some keyboard. They're all impeccably arranged. They're all have a cinematic quality to them, and feel like they should have probably soundtracked some sort of forgotten crime caper movie that was never released. And honestly, these tracks are the biggest highlight on this album. But I mean, that probably is just due not only to them making up the overwhelming majority of the tracks on here, but also the fact that they're just so much fun to listen to. I gotta say, even for as musically adventurous as this record is, it is never pretentious. This record is an absolute joy to listen to from start to end. Now, as much as I like those sort of up-tempo tracks, and they are a lot of fun to listen to, the one track on here that completely sold me on this record is the track Manchester. Which, a brief little aside, I have to point out that the majority of the tracks on this album are named after cities in the UK. And why an Italian-based Italian library producer is obsessed with cities in the UK is completely beyond me. And if someone would like to let me know as to why that's the case, I'd be really curious to find out. But anyways, back to the track Manchester. The reason this track is completely what I look for when I pick up a record like this. It's got hard drums, heavy guitar that are emphasizing the drums, great horn blasts, some unique arrangements, and of course it has this absolutely unbelievable drum break that cannot be explained. It has to be heard for yourself. And that one track to me, made this record worth the price of admission. I should point out that there is actually one up-tempo track that is worth sort of focusing on, and that's also on the second side of the record, and that's Liverpool, which has one of the most insane extended build-ups to a track that I think I've ever heard. And it's that sort of rising tension and delayed release of tension that really shows off how masterful William Antonini was as a producer. Which isn't to say that the other tracks on here don't have moments like that, but Liverpool really feels like the strongest of all the up-tempo tracks on this record. It has all the elements, horn blasts, funky drums, but that opening is really what makes the track Liverpool so special. The remaining tracks on here are definitely the more mellow tracks. One is sort of a smoky, cool, laid-back jazz track that it's got a really nice bass line groove to it. One is a little bit more of a moody, ambient, classical piece with some really sort of dissonant piano filled out with some nice little flute punctuations. And then there's the last track that sort of ends everything with, again, some flutes and just sort of mellows out the vibe after the whole up-tempo and aggressiveness of the Liverpool track. None of these tracks are really particular highlights from the album, but yet they don't really do anything to weigh it down, and they don't feel really out of place. And I guess even to a certain degree, they sort of complete the picture of the album and sort of the movie that doesn't exist that goes along with this record. Yeah, I think I'll go with that description. I only have one minor little nitpick about this record, and it's the fact that it's just too short. Clocking in at just under 30 minutes, I really enjoyed the sort of musical ride that this record took me on. I just wish it was a little bit longer. But, I mean, that's more of a personal preference than really a criticism of any of the music on here. And that's honestly because I don't really have any criticism of the music on here. I think it's all interesting. It's all totally unique. It's the sort of reason that I've been interested and gravitating towards European library music for all this time. And if you're looking for an entry point into this really obscure, esoteric world of music, I honestly can't recommend this album enough. And I'd even go as far as to say I recommend picking this up more than the Rene Costi stuff, just because if you're coming from more of a rock background than jazz or soul jazz or whatever, I feel like this might even be an easier record to get into. And it definitely hasn't satiated me in terms of me not wanting to ever pick up any more Italian records ever again. In fact, it's pretty much just whet my appetite, and now I'm going to start looking out for not only more stuff that this man's name has been attached to, but just Italian records in general. So, yeah, at the end of the day, all I can say is if you run across a copy of this, check it out. It's totally worth the money. William Antonini e la Sua Orchestra. Again, sorry for that horrible pronunciation. And that's going to be it for me today. I know this was a little bit shorter than some of the videos I've done before, but yeah, I didn't really have that much to say other than it's a record worth checking out. As always, go to my WordPress or Steemit blog, because that's where I put the musical links for this record, so you can check it out for yourself. Also, head over to my Instagram, because originally I was planning on doing a whole vlog about the Toshio Matsuda event. The video that I took wasn't really all that interesting and really wasn't deserving of its own video. I did end up, however, picking up his EP and actually getting him to sign it at the end of the night. He was really drunk when he signed it, but shout outs to Toshio Matsuda. He's a really nice guy. And that's going to be it for me today. I want to say thank you very much for watching. Hopefully, once again, I will be back to a fairly regular upload schedule, and I'm planning on getting the next Raw Select radio show out by either Saturday or Sunday. So definitely look forward to that. And hopefully some of the records that I've talked about in this past, or in the recent Raw Select record reviews will pop up in that Raw Select radio show. So definitely check that out. As always, thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace out. Boom!